No, we're going to the cloud. And we're going to ask Lynn to share our land acknowledgement.
Yes, I'm very happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting today on land that originally belonged to the Nisenan people in South Placer County and the Washoe people in the Tahoe region. We are grateful to them for their ongoing stewardship of this land and for the call to better care for our community.
Thank you, Lynn. And now I'm going to have Michelle Davis introduce our speaker, Jennifer Hansen, if I could, please.
Yes, today we are very happy to have Jennifer with us. Jennifer Hansen is the General Manager of the Nevada Irrigation District. She took over the General Manager position in June of this year, and she is the first woman to serve in this position in the 100-year history of NID. As NID's General Manager, Jennifer oversees more than 200 employees and has an annual budget of about $80 million. She came to NID from the city of Lincoln, where she was city manager, responsible for the daily operations of the full-service city. And previously, she served as Lincoln's Public Works Director. She has worked at a civil engineering firm and for the California Department of Transportation. Jennifer graduated from the University of Pacific with a Bachelor of Science in Geology. So Jennifer, I will turn this over to you now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to everybody else for the opportunity to speak to your group. It is always nice to get to know new people as well as to have the opportunity to share what we're doing at Nevada Irrigation District. I have a couple of brief things I'm going to review with the group, and then if you so desire, you can either just interrupt me as we are talking if you have questions or comments, or you can also use the chat function to ask questions and then I will get to them as we go along. Either way is just fine with me. So as was stated, I've been with Nevada Irrigation District since June of this past summer, and it's been a pretty exciting time. Not only have we been dealing with drought issues, but we are also embarking on a brand new planning process for what we refer to as the Plan for Water. And I'm going to review that in some detail, but prior to getting to that portion of the little talk, I thought I'd provide some stats I thought you might find of interest. So as everybody knows, we just had some fairly big storm events, but I would caution you that that does not mean the drought is in any way, shape, or form over. The state still has a drought declaration that is valid, as well as the Nevada Irrigation District's board's declaration of a stage 2 drought is also valid at this time. This district's water year, as well as generally the entire state's water year, starts in October 1st of each year and then runs through the end of September. So once we get to the October 1st timeframe, we kind of restart all of our accounting of precipitation and water storage. So I know that there's a lot of interest in the really large storm we had about a week and a half ago. And since October 1st of 2021, we have received 17.44 inches of precipitation at Bowman Lake. So that was from our rain gauge up at Bowman Lake. And this is 343% of average of what we typically receive in any particular year. NID has a reservoir-based water system, which means that we capture snowmelt. We do not rely on groundwater, and we store it in reservoirs for use throughout the year and into the summer irrigation and outdoor water landscaping water season. And so one of the things that occurred during the drought is the state did issue what's referred to as a curtailment. And essentially what that means is that we were not allowed to, under curtailment, divert or capture runoff that we would normally capture in our storage system for later use. When there's our curtailment on diversions, it essentially means that we have to let go any water that we would normally divert into our storage systems. However, prior to that large storm, the state did have some foresight to temporarily lift the curtailment. And so we were allowed to store a lot of that water from that very large storm system. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, we, at the end of the irrigation season, which we consider to be October 14th. So the irrigation season for us is the end of the large scale raw water use that is used for primarily agricultural irrigation. Ends on October 14th, which is 14 days past the beginning or end of the new water year. And since that time, at the end of the irrigation season, we had around 114,000 acre feet of storage. And we added approximately 25,000 acre feet of storage during the storm events that occurred in the October timeframe up until just, not today, but just up until yesterday. And so we do have a 138,943 acre feet of storage. Now, storage is very important from the consideration that we do typically use around 150,000 acre feet of water per year between our treated water customers as well as our raw water customers. We usually shoot for about 140,000 acre feet of storage for carryover purposes. And that is essentially just water that we want to have as a safety factor going into the next year. In the event that it is going to be a dry year, we don't want to come up short with water. Now, we have had some decent rains so far this year, but the weather experts are telling us to plan on a dry year after January 1st. Although it is a La Nina year for California, that does typically result in a mixed bag of precipitation for the state of California. And it is looking like some cooler air that is hanging over kind of the northern Pacific region out in the ocean region is going to cause us to have a fairly dry year after the 1st of January. So it is still important that we acknowledge that there's a drought that's still existing and that we still focus on our conservation efforts. And then lastly, I thought it would be interesting for the group just to talk about water conservation a little bit. So as most everybody knows on this meeting, that in 2015, we did experience a fairly significant drought. And at that time, we were collectively able to conserve within NID's territory 27% of water use when compared to the previous year, which is great. From 2016 to 2020, that conservation slowly decreased to about 8% in 2020. 2021 was 10% conservation. And then October 21, we were around 28%. One of the hard parts of judging water conservation and whether it is adequate or not is that water use is predominantly the highest as it relates to outdoor water use. So this is water use that is used for agricultural purposes, landscape irrigation, or even outdoor use at your residential homes. And typically what we find for water providers is that water use is most highly impacted by the weather. So if, for example, the rains extend into the May-June timeframe, you'll see much less water use for the year because people won't be required to turn on their irrigation. As opposed to if you start seeing a really hot summer that starts early and extends well into the October timeframe, then you will see some extremely high water use just due to the heat. And so this is definitely one of the issues that will continue to be a challenge throughout the state of California and in the world. In fact, we are having some higher volatility in the weather patterns, whether it be with precipitation, heat, or frequency and intensity of storms due to climate change. So that is one of the things that we are continuing to monitor very closely, working with our state partners. There's a lot of effort being expended at the state and federal level regarding climate change to see how it's going to continue to impact us into the future. But I can tell you we are seeing changes even at our local level at NID with the amount of snowpack that we end up with, the amount of runoff, One thing we have been noticing is that the ground does seem to be much drier year over year. And so we are getting less runoff from snow melt, and it's actually infiltrating more into the ground, which is not allowing us to capture as much. So with that said, the board of directors has a great plan to start planning for future long-term water needs. This is very important, not just for public safety and health reasons, for fire control reasons, but also just for the health of our watersheds and looking into the future to ensure we have a sustainable water source. So this effort is going to, and this is where I'm going to share my screen. This effort is referred to as the Plan for Water. And essentially what the Plan for Water is, it's going to be a multi-stage long-term planning effort by which we will go through a series of steps that is intended to result in a suite of strategies that could then be further fleshed out to address our long-term water needs. It's a 9-stage process. We do anticipate that it will take approximately 18 months. And the great thing about this process is everybody and anybody is invited. Whether you are a resident that lives within district, whether you are a customer or not a customer, or whether you just have interest, or whether you would be impacted. I'm sorry, so I have a question? No. Whether you'd be impacted in any way, shape, or form by the outcomes of the process, we are more than happy to have you at the table, and we do consider you a stakeholder. We've also designed the process so that you don't have to commit to the full 18-month process. You're more than welcome to participate at any of the stages as you see fit. And we call this the meet you at where you're at strategy. We know that not everybody has interest in the entire process, and not everybody has the time to commit to the entire process, but we do invite you to participate at the level that fits your schedule as well as your interest. So the first 3 stages are kind of the pre-work that needs to be done to really get into the meat of the effort. And if you can see my screen here, I have outlined our planning matrix and sharing it with you. It has been modified a little bit to better define some of the public outreach. But for this effort, I just grabbed a spreadsheet that will just show you kind of the stages. So that is the focus of what I'm presenting right now. So the first stage will consist of a system overview. We'll do a top to bottom overview of the entire system. One thing that is very interesting to note is that in the state of California, and certainly most likely in the entire country, we are known, NID is known to have one of the most complex water systems that there is. And this is due to the method by which we transfer water from the high elevation reservoirs all the way down to the lower elevation areas within Placer County. We have a giant canal system and flume system that is interrelated with a variety of power projects as well as other users of those distribution systems and conveyance systems. The second item that we will be reviewing is water rights. The NID has a lot of water rights, and those water rights essentially legally tell us how, where, and when we can utilize the water that we have a legal right to. So we will be reviewing the water rights in a comprehensive manner and taking a look at those and seeing how they apply to our system. The purpose of the first 2 stages of the Plan for Water is really to develop a common understanding amongst participants as to what our system is and how it works and how it legally works. And it gets a little bit complex when you include reservoir management, all the conveyance systems, and all the powerhouses. There's a lot of moving pieces. We will then enter into a strategic planning session. The strategic planning session is intended to obtain consensus from the board on what the board desires for the district to be now and into the future. And this will be completed through the development of the mission, vision, and strategic priorities. It is then intended that that effort will be then flushed out more on an annual basis through a separate document, but it will be utilized to guide the Plan for Water process as we go. Stage 4 is a basis for the Plan for Water, and that's essentially kind of what I refer to as the logistical stage. And this is where we'll really talk about the planning horizon, intended outcomes, frequencies of updates, and how the document is used. One thing that is really important to note when you're doing very significant water modeling, or in fact, it applies to just about any modeling, whether it's traffic modeling or sewer modeling, or even air quality modeling, there are a lot of assumptions that go into these models. So that what that means is that the assumptions are not necessarily always perfect, and that you should be on at least an every 5-year basis updating any assumptions with facts and information that you do know from real data. And so it is important that the plan for water and specifically the modeling is updated on a frequent basis to reflect current conditions as well as our current system. Once we get into stages 5, 6, and 7, that's really the meat of the hard effort, and those are the big modeling portions of the project. And so we will be looking at the hydrology in stage 5, and we're really going to be looking at the watersheds on a holistic basis to determine how much water is actually available, what is going on with the watersheds, how is climate change impacting our water reliability and resources. And then we're going to start tiering into, after that, the next stage, which is kind of the demand section. So when we're talking about demand, we're talking about how much water do we actually need in the future. And so this is really where it comes into play, that you take a close look at land use policies with each of the land use authority jurisdictions. We look at water use trend, we look at growth, we look at regulatory requirements, and also watershed health. So we'll kind of take a holistic approach at the entire watershed and how much water we have. We're going to come figure out in stage 5, and then how much water we need on the short and long term will be completed in stage 6. Then we really start taking a look at supply. And this is, how do we supply enough water to meet the demands that were identified in stage 6? And there could be a suite of different supply opportunities. We could be making our own supply more efficient. We could be reducing the use of our supply for specific uses. There's a lot of different ways to look at supply. And so we will be saying, okay, this is how much supply we have now. This is how much more supply and or storage we need into the future. And there's a lot of different methods to go through that exercise. And the district owes it to ourselves, as well as to all the ratepayers, our community, and our neighbors, to really take a holistic approach and a holistic look at supply issues, to ensure that we are looking at all options. Because if you just focus on storage and you don't focus on watershed health or operations, you're really missing out on an opportunity to meet those needs. We will then tier into stage 8, and that's really where we start looking at the strategy options. Like I just said, there are a number of different strategies that you can utilize, and in totality, they can help you meet your supply. It doesn't have to be one particular strategy or another. There are opportunities to operate the system more efficiently. We could be doing restoration of our existing system, restoration of the watershed. We can do better management of the watershed and or our system. And then there is always an increased supply or decreased supply. Increased supply could be removal of sediment from existing reservoirs, and decreased supply could also say, okay, well, we're no longer going to provide water for this particular use. We don't feel that it's a good use of water. So those are just some of the things we're essentially going to throw all of the potential solutions out on the table, do a big brainstorming effort to get us to stage 9. And stage 9 will really be the strategy evaluation. So that's where we will look at a suite of metrics and rank each one of the strategies based off all the metrics in total, so that we can then start developing a ranking of those solutions that really come up to the top to be the best solutions. Once we are completed with that effort, we then hope that it will tier into a raw water master plan, a treated water master plan, a watershed management plan, as well as an operations plan. And does anybody have questions regarding the plan for water before I move on to the next item?
There is a question in the chat.
Okay, hold on one second. When you're sharing, you can't see the chat. All right. Yeah, definitely. So the question is regarding watershed health, how involved is NID in promoting forest thinning since overgrowth dramatically increases water demanded by the forests? Yeah, so overgrowth in forests does pose a lot of issues. It does create increased water demand. It creates increased fire risk. It also increases the risk for disease within the trees, and also creates a poor biological environment for the watershed itself. So we do go through and do select thinning projects, removal of kind of, the smaller trees, kind of what some of us would refer to as the sucker trees that start growing up around the larger trees. So we are active in managing forest health through tree removal. We work with a variety of state and local agencies to get that completed. So it is definitely something that needs to be an ongoing effort on our part. All right. Oh, I see one more. Rosalie.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you get a very large construction project, whether it be building, homes or shopping center, whatever. Do they have to get in touch with the water district to make sure that there's going to be enough water for all of these things? I mean, we're always talking about the drought, and I just wonder, do we have enough for the increase in growth that they seem to think that California is going to be having?
Right, they do. So it depends on the level of the project, but new development projects, they do have to do a water quality supply assessment. And so one thing to note is that NID is not a land use authority, so we do not actually approve the project itself, but we do have to verify that there is enough water supply available for what they are doing. The projects that have come forward to date have been relatively small, and most projects do not meet the threshold to be required to do the state mandated water quality supply assessment. However, with residential housing, as well as most commercial development, not industry, but commercial, their water use is actually fairly small in the grand consideration of agricultural and irrigation use. So with the new changes that came by the state, that are mandated by the state for water conservation measures within the home, as well as the new restrictions that are required to be placed on the construction of homes with new landscaping. Yeah, the MELWU, they're called the MELWU restrictions. It is very much limited. So it's not residential housing, especially the rate that is going on here, isn't an over concern for the district. At this point, if we were to be concerned, the board would have to essentially declare that we would need to put a moratorium on any new connections. Now, with that said, we do temporarily have a moratorium on connections for new raw water accounts just in a drought stage.
And there's another question in the chat.
Yeah, and I think I see this question from Joyce Beeman, and I know that Joyce knows this answer because we actually spoke on the phone about it. So what geographic area does NID cover? So we do cover Nevada County, portion of Placer County, and then kind of going down towards Yuba and the Smartsville area. So the process for notifying users as agricultural water is shut off, such as before forecast a storm. So we do not have a process by which we will notify users. So what happens is when we have very large storms like we just had, we will shut the canals off so that we do not cause property damage when the canals overfill, because there's water being transported in them, as well as water coming into them from the rain system. So the canals are a little bit of a touchy system, and that is related to that there are issues with the canals. We do not have canal modernization. We cannot remotely monitor the canals. And so a lot of times you will find canals will be shut off because debris gets caught up against the trash racks. And we also do canal maintenance during the winter. So it's very important for our winter water users, especially if you have animals, to keep a supply of water on site in a storage container so that you can continue to feed or have water your animals during those situations. At this point, our financial system is just not well suited to do any type of automatic notification. So we're going to continue with the current process until such time we're a little bit more sophisticated. All right, I did have one more thing. Do we have any plan for water comments? Okay, so I have one more thing to share with you. I'm gonna share my screen really quick. And here we go. So one thing, the plan for water process does start on November 9th. And a good area, I just want to show you two quick things. If you want to be notified regarding the plan for water process or anything that NID is doing, always utilize our website. We have plan for water information on our website. I can actually show you where that's at. So you see here, this is the homepage of our website. You could go to the plan for water button. There are two different areas where you can go to the plan for water button, and that will provide you the latest and greatest information. It will provide you documents and tell you what is going on. And then, if you would like to have automatic notifications regarding any updated information that gets sent out, then you can join our mailing list and we can send those out. And then lastly, I did want to show you one additional piece of area that I think that will be helpful if you need information. And that is with the general manager's newsletter. So this is put out on a monthly basis. And essentially what this newsletter does is it provides some consistent information, but it will also provide you information regarding things that is going on. And so we just recently had our 100th year birthday. And so you can go to our website and take a look at the 100-year history book. I find it very interesting. So I think that would be a good option. We will always provide updates regarding the plan for water in it. This is something that's exciting. Every year we are required by the state to present and produce an annual water quality report. Anybody who provides treated drinking water is required to do this. And you can always access the report. It's available online. And we have, as always, great water quality. We will then provide information about anything that is specific or new that may be of interest to you as a customer. And in this particular situation, we did provide some information about how the river fire burn scar did related to the storm events. We will provide information regarding NID reservoir levels, which you can review on our website, upcoming meetings and events. We have a link to capital improvement projects, CIP project status report. So that's updated on a monthly basis. And then we will provide information regarding water conservation. And if you really want to get down into the weeds, if you're interested in hydropower, we generate hydropower from our dam facilities where there is a hydropower house. And so we do provide generation report as well as the monthly availability report. And so I think that is a really good resource for you if you want to keep up to date on what's going on. And with that, that is all I had. Is there any additional questions from the group?
I do have one question, Jennifer. Can
Yes,
you give a little explanation of how NID and Placer Water interface with each other to provide water?
Yeah, so Placer County Water Agency is our neighboring agency, and we partner with them and coordinate with them on a frequent basis. In fact, their general manager and I are usually in touch multiple times a week. We do have some shared facilities, shared conveyance facilities. We also send raw water through their foothills or through their treatment plant that then gets served to the city of Lincoln, which is in our district. So we continue to look for opportunities where we can overlap and share facilities, as well as build more facilities if that is needed. They're really good partners, so they are a very good neighbor. Anyone else? All right, I don't see anyone.
Yes, I have some questions.
Oh, sure.
Are there some dam projects that are, I wouldn't say pending, but under discussion? And would those dam projects affect your agency?
There is only one large dam project that I know of that's really moving forward in California, and that's the Sites Reservoir, and that's up in the northern area, up in the northern part of the valley. We're not part of that project. I don't know a whole lot about the project. They do have a very good informational website. It does have a lot of federal and state support for it. It is off river, which is a good thing. You know, they're not damming the river up, they're pulling water off and putting it down. But it is intended to address some of the long-term storage issues that are going on in California. Outside of that, I'm not overly familiar with other dam projects in California, and we're not participating in them. As you know, there was the big Centennial Dam that was on NID's radar for a long time. All work has been seized on that project and will not be moving forward in any way, shape, or form until after I should say if we are, once we complete the plan for water project, that's what that process is intended to do, is to have a more thoughtful process for identifying what are our supply needs and what are solutions to those, as opposed to kind of the backwards, here's a solution in a reservoir, and now we're going to kind of back in the rest of the process. So stay tuned. There's no work at this point being completed on the Centennial Dam project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have any other questions, folks? You did such a good job, Jennifer, that we don't have any questions. You were very forthcoming, and I really want to appreciate that. I have one question stemming from my past history in my other life, and I work for Tahoe City PUD.
Oh, right on.
We did water quality samplings there
Mhm.
fairly frequently. How frequently do you do water quality? I mean, I got guinea pigged in there sometimes to smell and taste and whatever. How often do you do that?
Yeah, it depends on the constituent. So for treated water, there's a very specific, some are automated sampling that occurs every day, some are weekly, some are monthly, some things we have to do on an annual basis. So it just depends on what the constituent is and what we're sampling for and why, but the state of California has a very robust sampling program. I would certainly recommend you take a look at the annual water quality report, and you'll see the breadth of constituents that we're required to sample for.
So do you then when you say the breadth of constituents, so are you talking about multiple water companies or?
I was talking about pollutant constituents.
Okay.
Yeah. So we only do sampling for our water plants.
Okay.
I
I'm wondering.
have
We have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. How much do you interface with other irrigation districts? Because we're, that all that regional stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, we actually, right now, very, very frequently, the water users have been working with the state on a couple of large efforts, and we do end up meeting a couple of times, usually a week. So quite often we belong to and participate in a variety of groups that are regional in nature, whether it be Northern California, whether it be Sacramento area, or whether it be all of California water agencies. So we do quite a bit of coordination. It just depends on what the topic is and who will be impacted on it and what we're trying to do.
Right.
The big ones we coordinate with are Yuba, South Sutter, and Placer County. That's more on an operational basis.
Well, I have a feeling you're going to all have to work together to some extent, just because if the water is really short, then it's going to have to be prioritized in some way. Where the water goes. I mean, we're having an effort in Butte County to have a private irrigation district put together. It's called the Tuscan Water District, and it's farmers who want to control it rather than having it be a public utility.
Right. Yeah, there is the solutions to California's water challenges are definitely going to take a lot of collaboration and cooperation amongst everybody. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Is there an oversight, a regional planning thing like Tahoe TRPA that involves Placer County, this part of Placer County?
Yeah, so the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency is more of they're a unique animal in that they are basically the Metropolitan Transportation Agency that goes across state lines. So they're a little bit different in that they are required to be able to take state or federal funding into the state and into that particular region. And then it has a lot to do with transportation funding. So for us, we have SACOG, and then we have some other land use planning agencies. There's Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. I'm not as overly familiar with the transportation planning agencies that pertain to Nevada County. My work is always I did a lot of transportation work, but it was never in Nevada County in particular. But TRPA is unique in that it also has some permitting authority from an environmental perspective, and that's typically not usual. What you usually find these large metropolitan transportation planning agencies, they look at air quality, housing, and transportation. They don't typically get into water quality here. So we don't really interact on that level. Yeah, but I used to do a lot of work with TRPA.
It is a unique animal.
They are very unique animal, yes.
Any other questions, audience? Well, Jennifer, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate you. We've had so many questions since the announcement of pretty massive growth in South Placer County. And the questions always seem to be, yeah, there's plenty of water, but you're going, but are you counting the same water?
Yeah.
People are, and that's often we just get these kind of pretty vague generalities to questions. So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are looking at a really cogent plan rather than, like you said, the work backwards thing.
Right.
What do we really need and what works? Because until we change water rights at the state level, this is going to be a nightmare for everybody.
Right. And
Those of you who do any kind of irrigation and have just messed with miners inches,
Right.
know whereof we speak. That's just craziness.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate the opportunity. And, our website has a wealth of information. And at any time, if you ladies would like another update on the Plan for Water process as we're going along, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you for that information. We really appreciate it.
All
Good
right.
afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you too.
And if there are no further questions, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, we have our executive board meeting will be on the 16th of this month, and we'll be getting back to you. So have a fabulous, if I don't see any of you Thanksgiving, have a great Thanksgiving and stay well. Good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.